Thanks for tuning in. You're listening to the Shred Coach podcast with Tom Adams. Jill Fasken, the former owner of Colorado Document Security located in Grand Junction, Colorado, joins Tom on this episode. Jill describes how she and her husband Scott started the company in 2003 and the growth and development of it over the years. But the focus of this conversation is how Jill responded and dealt with Scott's unexpected death in 2019 and the immediate and ongoing actions she took to lead the business forward.
Jill Fasken, welcome to the Shred Coach podcast.
I'm glad to be here.
Oh, I am so glad you're here because I have to say without question, you are one of my heroes, and it's not every day I get a hero on my show. So I'm really glad to have you here. So
well, thank you.
This is going to be kind of a unique episode because there's a bigger story here that we're going to tell. And your story connects with other stories that are going to be part of this conversation. But let's start with the shredding business that you were a part of. Tell me a little bit about your shredding company.
All right, I will. We started in 2003. Scott was watching TV, and as he always did, would watch the background. And he was watching an Enron interview, and he doesn't watch the reader or the reporter. He watches the background, and there goes a shred truck. And I don't know how long from that point he started just obsessing on that shred truck and figuring out what that was. And I finally said, stop talking about it and just go buy a truck. And he did. I guess he needed that permission, right?
Right. So in 2003, he's watching Enron on TV.
Yes.
Scott is watching on TV. And so what was happening at that particular point in time, besides Enron on TV, which obviously was a big thing? What's happening in your and his life at that point?
We're getting ready to sell a business that we had before.
Okay.
He was wanting to get out of that business. It was we had an art gallery over in Provo, Utah, and he was done with that, and as was I. And he wanted to do something different. He was ready to move on. And so he saw that and started researching around here. And of course, in Western Colorado, the national shred companies were coming through on national contracts, but there was no local in Western Colorado. And the first thing he did was call NADE. He called Bob Johnson at NADE and joined NADE. And he went to the conference before we even had a truck.
Okay.
And we actually got an offer to buy our area, because we were a big area. We started just in Grand Junction, of course, but eventually it was the whole Western Colorado, northern New Mexico, and southern Wyoming, and eastern Utah. So, because we're all the way on the west side of Colorado. So
a massive, what would currently be a very large area that you cover.
Yes.
So let's do a fast forward, because I think it's relevant to the story, and I don't want to keep talking like this isn't part of the story, which is last year something happened with Colorado Document Security. So let's just deal with that part, and then we can go back and tell the story in the middle.
Okay. All right.
So what happened last year with the business?
Last year I sold the business.
Okay.
Yeah, in November, and that had been a long process too, and it was something we had been, an exit strategy we'd been working on.
Yeah.
And so there were companies that were scared of the size of our area, not necessarily the size of our company, but the size of the space that we were in, what we were covering. We had a lot of windshield time on our trucks and on our drivers.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the company at the point you sold it. I'm not going to worry about the sale, because that's just, to me, is irrelevant to the story at this point, although it's still part of the story. But how big, I know you said you covered all of Western Colorado, but how many trucks were you running? How many staff? What was the size of the company?
I owned 7 trucks. At the end, 10 employees. I had 4 drivers. With COVID, that sort of changed some, but off and on. But there were 10 of us kind of running this big company. Yeah, it seemed huge to me.
Right.
I mean, we had, I don't know how many active clients we had. I didn't look at that.
Right.
We
though.
just went,
because if you were in business since 2003 to 2021, That's a lot of years
Yes.
that you create a lot of business, especially if you're one of the only independents in the whole region.
On the whole Western region. And a lot of those clients we had from day one.
Wow.
From the very beginning, there were several of them that were still having us shred for them.
Yeah.
And they almost became friends, pretty much over the years. Yeah.
So it was all mobile-based shredding. It was only mobile trucks. There was no plant.
Yes.
There was no baling operation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Scott wanted to be the Cadillac service for on-site document destruction.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got a sense of where you were when you sold the business, but let's now, because we have that as a bookend, let's go back a little bit further. And Scott founded the business in 2003, 2004, by the time you kind of got it up and rolling and active.
Yes.
So what was your involvement in the business, from 2003 for, let's say, the first 10, 15 years? What was your engagement in the business?
I did the books. Yeah.
Okay.
And I did the books. I did all of those sort of, what are they, licenses and registrations and certification and keeping track of all of that. And I was in the office doing invoicing. And now the office at that point was in our home, it was down in the basement. We had the one truck, we had Scott driving, and we had me down in the office and in the basement. And the truck was parked in the backyard.
Wow.
I could see it from my kitchen window. Yeah.
And so you're basically a couple running a business together, and
yes,
it begins to grow over time. So did you always maintain that role in the business?
Yes.
Okay.
I did. It evolved some because we had to hire somebody to do invoicing for us, and somebody was running the office when we moved the office out of it. When we got he bought the second truck, and that was still at home. And when he bought the third truck, I said, "That's it. We gotta have."
I want my garden back.
I want my garden. That's right. Yes. And we had the driver come and park his car, or her car. We had a woman too, in the backyard, and I'm like, we're out of here.
Right.
And yeah.
And so you got a office, and then when was that roughly? What time?
That was 2010. I can tell you exactly because Scott had his aortic dissection the day before we were moving into the office.
Wow.
Yeah, into the new office. And so, the employees everybody jumped in and helped to get that move done, and the trucks kept running. And, I was the one who was following Scott he's on the gurney going into emergency surgery for his aortic dissection. And I'm asking him where I have my notebook out. Where are the trucks going tomorrow? Because I didn't know if he was going to be alive the next day.
Oh.
And the nurses thought I was crazy. But anyway, it all worked out, and we got moved into the new place, and it made all the difference in the world. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So we've got 2003 started up out of the house. 2010, you moved to an office. Scott goes through a major heart surgery at that point.
Yes.
Unexpected at that point.
Yes.
And then he recovers and recuperates, and then business grows. So it's over the next number of years that you grow from being a 3-truck operation to a 7-truck operation.
Yes. Yeah.
And tell me about your perspective of that growth period. What was happening as you watched the business grow? What were some of the secrets that were, transpiring, if there were any?
Any secrets? Well, there weren't. I don't know. There were a huge amount of secrets, although, Scott was he was constantly visiting clients. He was constantly calling them. He was joining chambers, Chamber of Commerce in different cities, because we're in, 20 different little towns or some big towns. And he liked some better than others. but he, so that he would personally contact people. He'd go to their events, and he'd face-to-face talk to people, because he wasn't in the truck anymore. He stopped being a main driver about the third year. So he was, but from then on, even after, and we would send, he would send notes to people. He would call them on the phone. He would visit them in person. We would go, on our weekend drives, and he'd see a new place, and he'd call them on Monday. He'd say, "Hey, I just drove by your your plant. And, it's something that you need a lot of oil and gas over here.
Right.
So a lot of it was oil and gas, and coal at the time. And, a lot of business from those industries. And then he'd, try and send out peaches, or he would have the drivers leave things on the top of the bin, like a little bag of candy or something on the top of the bin, or nail files. He had nail files printed up, and the ladies loved those silly nail files.
So yeah, because if anybody's lived in this industry, Scott Fasken had a presence that was relational, he was larger than life in many ways. And he had this presence that sort of came into a room, and when Scott put his attention on you, you were very aware of it. And
and he almost made it an experience. He made shredding is not a really fun experience, but it was, he trained the drivers to make an experience for the clients when they're there, because they're the front line. They walk into all these offices, and we expected them to be friendly and do the job quickly and get out and clean and, keep things orderly. And he was definitely a social butterfly.
Yeah. And I think, to me, when I said, what are some of the secrets of the success that you had in the business, undoubtedly that relational superpower that Scott had, just the connection, the contact, the perpetual doing anything he could to build a relationship was a huge part of that.
Yeah. And another thing, from the start, we did not wrap our trucks with the big Colorado document security on it. We had a big phone number on it. And we got a lot of, as we're driving around, because we had so much time on the road. And then when we had multiple trucks out, we would get so many calls from we saw your truck and that's what we need. And of course, from the beginning in Western Colorado, we were educating everybody. Anybody who would listen to us, what you need to do with your documents and in your business. And he was constantly doing speeches at different places. He was being interviewed on TV. He would send out a press release somewhere about something. Free shred days we didn't do very many for free. We charged whoever, if it was a bank, we charged them. But those sort of shred days, we'd get, advertising that way. I don't think we never bought radio advertising or TV advertising or newspaper advertising. It was all contact. It was all contact in another way.
Yeah. And I think because I interviewed Scott years ago on my first podcast, the Rim Pro Report. And one of the things Scott talked about in that particular interview was the focus on security instead of shredding.
Yes.
Right? There was a deliberate decision.
That is exactly right. Yeah. We're in the industry of security and not shredding.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was a very big part of his predisposition. Exactly right. So fast forward the story, in like 2017, 2018, you as a couple start looking at potentially transitioning, like a succession plan. That was part of the planning that was starting to happen. Give me a bit of sense of sort of that process through Scott and you realizing that, the time had come that you had done it in this business.
Yeah. Well, of course, he was never going to stop working.
Right.
So I just needed to get him out of the space far enough away. So we were starting to look for a place to move to within our area so that he wasn't right here in the office all the time. And I don't know, I think the employees liked him well enough. I don't think that was a problem, but he would never stop working.
Right.
So it had to be a place that we could he would be able to still come back, because I don't think he ever would have given it up completely until we sold it.
Right.
And so he had meetings with different national companies, of course, just like all, at conference, just like a lot of companies do.
Yep.
And so we had been talking about selling the business, certainly. But of course, then he's talking about other businesses that he's going to start.
Right.
But yeah.
Right.
He had a whole list of those too.
I talked to him about a few of those, actually.
Yeah, coffee, and I can't remember what all.
Car parts for old FJs or something.
Well, yeah, I believe that. I've got a garage full of those. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't hear about that business, but I'm not surprised.
Yes.
Yeah. I know the one I heard about was the coffee shop on the ski hill up at Steamboat. He was going to put it right on the ski hill,
Right.
so people could just ski right up to it.
There you go.
Anyway,
An entrepreneur, a never turn off
never
entrepreneur.
ending. And another one was, I don't hate to get off on this, but another one was, oh gosh, bleachers, mobile bleachers.
Oh.
That he would buy a big pickup truck and they'd get pulled behind this. And so, there could be events up in Aspen that need extra bleachers, or there's events down in Telluride that need more bleachers. They've got all their outside events in the summertime, and so he was going to deliver these things, and that was another one.
Yeah.
So anyway, there was always something. But anyway, where were we?
We were just it was, there's a succession plan beginning to happen. There's an awareness of the potential of selling the business. Scott's entrepreneurial presence just never stops coming up with ideas.
Yeah. We did talk about getting a general manager, a high-end, somebody who had been in the industry for a long time that would be able to take over the business, the day-to-day running of the business. And so that was one of the options as well, and not selling it, keeping it going, and not selling it. And actually he had gotten an offer to purchase the company, and he declined it because he decided that he wanted to just keep it going, and he was going to do this general manager, find somebody that,
Right. So this whole time, you continue to be part of the business in the background in terms of the back of the house, financials, HR certifications, licenses, but unexpectedly in October of 2019.
Yep, he died.
Yeah. And that was a massive blow to all of us. All of us who knew him. Yeah, shocked. And
it was totally unexpected.
Yeah. And I guess why, I didn't know you. I knew Scott very well before that point, but I only got to know you a lot after that point. But,
yes, I know. You've been great.
Yeah, but why I call you my hero is because from somebody who worked the back of the house to all of a sudden being in an instant put into the front of the house.
Yes.
The operations of the shredding business, the sales, marketing, operations, everything, human resources, managing the team. You, with all of the incredible emotional overwhelm that happens in losing Scott, the business had to go on.
It had to go on.
And you took over. So tell me a little bit about your process. And not so much the emotional one, because that's inevitably there. And I know that that's just part of it. But what was transpiring for you as you had to take over this thing?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I did, after a couple days, he died on a Monday early morning, or Sunday late night, I guess. Wednesday morning, I took Monday and Tuesday off. And Wednesday morning, with my daughter, walked into the office to talk to everybody so that they could see. I was certainly emotional, but they could see, I said, we are going to keep going here. This is not going to change. But I asked them to help me out here for the next couple weeks. They did. Of course, everybody wanted a job too. Right. They didn't, they were super helpful. And the other thing that happened those first 2 weeks was, at that point, I had 6 trucks. I didn't have the 7th truck yet. 4 of the 6 trucks were in the shop that first 2 weeks. There was something wrong with, and that I'm like, okay, this can't happen. Number one, what's going on? I decided that I needed to go to all those shops that they were, one was tire shop, one was at the, I don't know what all was happening. But I took myself into all those offices, and the main maintenance, because I'd been paying bills. I knew exactly, and Scott would always, and plus I'd been shuttling trucks around. I never drove the trucks, but I picked up drivers and I'd meet them there and all that. I did that kind of shuttling. So I knew where these were, and I went and introduced myself because they didn't know me either.
Right.
Other than I paid the bills. And I said, I'm going to be the one who's going to make the final decision on repair, not anybody in my office, because I'm the one paying the bills. And I did go around and do that. I don't know that it helped. I did get 2 of the trucks came right back and we're ready to go, and that was great. One of them was on a long-term fix from an accident that had been in and was waiting for parts even then. And one of them, we had an in-house part-time subcontract maintenance guy who he could fix something there at the shop, and it ended up being a 2-week fix. And I said, never again. I had to pull up my bootstraps and be really straightforward with him and say, you are never putting my trucks up on a stilt in my shop again. And so we got that fixed, and things, I just kept moving on, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like you kind of took control of this. Like, so this event happens, and now 2 days later, you're talking to everybody, you're connecting, and in that period, now with trucks down, you now start taking control. Like, you just go, okay, I got that piece and that piece.
Yes.
What was the hardest thing to take control of that first few weeks? What was the thing that was the most challenging?
The most challenging, I would say, was the employees. Yeah, I would say it was the employees and keeping them, I'm the boss, making sure that they know that I'm the boss. And I had a couple of them that took advantage of me. I'm fairly mild-mannered, which is, a curse and a blessing. And my biggest challenge on my end was I had to be stronger and not let them walk all over me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the employee situation you had to take over, and then, you're past that 2-week period. What do you start learning, seeing, experiencing as you get farther into this?
Well, I didn't realize how much Scott was doing. That's one thing. He'd go to the office early in the morning. He was an early riser, and he'd be home by 10 o'clock. And of course, 10 o'clock on, he's on the phone with people. That's when he did his talking. Everybody knows about that. Some of his, buddies especially, but he was in contact and keeping track of new laws in the state of Colorado. And I didn't understand any of those things. I had to start learning those things.
Right.
And so I started doing research on, I knew about HIPAA and I knew about some of these others, but there were some new things coming on that I needed to know about. And I tried to learn more about the shredding industry. And I changed payroll. That was a big thing, where I had been doing payroll all along through QuickBooks, and we had a paper timesheet that they filled out. I switched to a payroll service, and it was the best thing. I wish I had done it years ago.
Right. It's funny how when you've done something for years and then you get a whole set of responsibilities thrown on you, how you immediately outsource, like outsource.
Yes. I started outsourcing. That's for sure. I did. And that was a major one that I did. And of course, my accountant was helping me. I had a great team. Our attorney was good friends, and my accountant just dove right in and really helped me through all the financial end of this. And thank God I didn't have any, I wasn't at that point. I was done with, do I have enough money for payroll? The end of the, I paid every other week. And at the beginning, you're kind of, I don't know if I have enough money to cover payroll. And we were past that. So that part I didn't have to worry about, but it was in the planning of, I need to have a truck. I needed to get another truck. And I had, I'd been involved in buying the trucks and all of that. Actually, I had not been involved in what kind of truck I'm ordering and what part. Yeah. What
the heck am I buying?
What?
I know how to write a check and deal with all the registration, but what am I buying?
Yeah.
So how did you process that? Because that's huge, right? Because that was always Scott's part of the equation. So how did you process the purchase of a new truck? Because you had to get one.
I had to get one. I got the old documents from the old trucks. And so I pulled them out and I started, of course, even reading those. I'm like, I don't know what that is, what that thing is. And certainly I worked with, we had Alpine trucks, and I worked with them, and everybody in the industry that I needed help. I mean, people like yourself, they were so gracious. Okay. So, just a minute.
Yeah.
Over a damn truck. Oh gosh.
Well, it's such a big part of, of taking over all of this stuff is to also recognize you had a lot of support.
Yes.
That
Yes.
was,
And I can remember my mom saying to me, when you need somebody, you should use them, because it's going to turn around and they're going to need you at some point. And so I did have to take help for sure.
Well, and I think from my perspective, one of the major pieces of the puzzle was Scott had invested so much in so many for so many years.
Yes.
That, there's that whole concept of, the emotional bank account where people fill the,
Oh,
they just
yeah.
spend a lot of years filling the emotional bank account. And I feel like even from my perspective, Scott filled my emotional bank account. When I went through my cancer journey, I literally got an email, text, voicemail, live call every day for 5 years from the man.
Yeah.
He never stopped. And to me, the emotional bank account was so full that, like I said earlier, you and I didn't have a deep relationship at that point, but all of the emotional investment Scott had made in me immediately became available to you because of that history.
It was awesome. Yeah. It made a huge difference. But so in buying the truck, I did a resource guy at Alpine, and he helped me. And one of my drivers, my top driver, actually was helping me as well with the technical part of the truck,
right,
and what we needed. And I feel very fortunate that I was able to buy one, because I guess there weren't very many. They're backed up.
No, at the point in time you bought it, it was one of it was really hard getting trucks at that point in time. But I think what's so powerful to me about what transpired for you was that despite this deep emotional loss, you sort of just charged forward and got a truck. And then
and in the middle of that, we had COVID hit.
Right.
And oh my gosh, that I was terrified at first, until I learned that we were essential work service. But then it was a whole new set of issues working with the employees. With that. And as everybody knows, everybody's been through that. We muddled through and I was determined to have a company on the other side so that I could sell it. Had an offer on the company before COVID hit, and we had a closing date set. It had to be canceled because of COVID. So I had another 2 years to run the business.
Right.
And I was gonna do it.
Run it, you did. And run it, you did.
I did.
And I think a couple of the other pieces to me that are so powerful in this were a lot of people, Scott's been involved in so many conferences over the years, and a lot of times, would talk about, your unique business, Colorado Document Security in the world. And he talked, and you mentioned it earlier, windshield time. But a lot of companies in this industry don't understand windshield time like you understand windshield time.
Yes.
And that creates a whole level of unique requirement on a shredding business. And so what did you learn about windshield time going from back of the house to front of the house, I'll call it?
To front of the house.
Yeah. What did you learn about that whole process as it related to employees and the complexity of your unique business in the world of shredding?
Yeah. Well, covering that amount of territory, and of course, we're talking different seasons. And so we are going over high mountain passes, and winter, summer, we have rock slides, we have any number of avalanches now and then. I mean, these things didn't happen often and didn't ever happen on one of our trucks, but a road could get shut down, in a second, and the driver has to drive all the way around a different mountain pass to go,
which is
down
hours,
south, for instance.
Which is hours and hours. Yeah.
Hours. And so that changes, and that would change then the route. And then we'd have to reassess who got covered, which stops got made, which ones didn't, and have to rearrange things. And I would guess, every year we had maybe only one snow day. I mean, literally, where we couldn't go out. There was always some times that we got stuck in different ways. But so we also had those glitches along the way. And if something and of course, if a truck is out and something happens and it has to be towed, and, it's up in Wyoming. So we learned, or it's down in New Mexico,
right?
Or, or someplace. I retrieve drivers. If it was close enough, we'd go pick them up and deal with the truck later, because our drivers were number one, and we always wanted the drivers to be safe, and we didn't want them sitting out stranded somewhere. So we did have that extra. I would say that was one of the main things, is real big issue was, and it happened, maybe 4 times a year. And so it wasn't as often as people would think, but yeah.
So from the period between when we lost Scott to when you sold the business, what are the things that you did that you're most proud of doing for yourself? Like what, if you're just looking in the mirror and you got nobody else to talk to, and you said, I'm really proud of that thing that I did, like that thing there or that thing there. I know you already talked about changing the whole payroll process, but buying a truck, that's huge. But what else? What else are you really proud of that you accomplished in those few years?
Well, I would say, for one thing, I was able to keep all those employees. I had one guy that left because of COVID, but other than that, I was able to keep those employees. I tried as best I could, and I know they weren't all super happy, but I did keep them, and I was able to give them raises, and we couldn't have the parties we used to have because of COVID, but I kept in touch with them all, and just running the books, keeping them, literally, I was much better. Once COVID hit, I moved my office. I was mostly home anyway, but I really moved everything home for myself and got, the computer system all connected so I could remote in, and that helped immensely. And I worked every day, and especially on the weekends, because nobody's on the computers at the office at that time. So I could,
right. You had unlimited access.
Yeah. So I had hours and hours that I worked, during the weeks, and I just kept going. I guess I'm, just really happy that really grateful that I kept going. I kept it going. And we dropped, everybody dropped a little bit during COVID, but, over here, number one, we don't have any high rises. So I didn't lose very many clients at all during COVID. So I was, it dropped a little bit because offices were closed, but they still needed shredding, and we just did it differently.
Yeah. Well, I want to transition a little bit as we end our conversation more to, there was a lot of lessons that I believe you learned after Scott's passing, and a lot of lessons that I think are really important to other business owners. The lessons that you uniquely learned that, I think because you had an inside track, but you had to learn a lot of stuff in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
And I guess the question is, if you had the chance to talk to an owner and a couple who happen to own a business together, a business of your size, smaller, maybe a little bit bigger, what would you tell them to be doing now, instead of waiting till, and instead of having to deal with what you dealt with? And I don't know, if there are some lessons there, but undoubtedly either there's stuff that you did do that worked and helped, or afterwards you realized, oh, we should have done that beforehand.
Well,
proactively.
one of those that beforehand things is, I wish we had done more contracts on our clients. We're, out here in Western Colorado, not that we're backward folks out here, but, a lot of handshake sort of things. And considering the number of clients we had, and Scott, that was not his thing, was to be organized like that. He was always amazed at how organized I was with my binders and my folders and everything in QuickBooks, and I knew where everything was. But I did not know that I should have had more contracts. And I wish I had, and I had those 2 years to do it. And, I had 2 years. I had, so from 2003, I could have been doing it.
Right.
But I didn't know, when it came to sell the business, that would have made a bigger difference if I had had more contracts.
Yeah.
We certainly had a lot of, like I said, a lot of clients that have been with us for many years, over a decade. So, they're not a contract, but it's pretty standard thing for them to, to do. But that was one. Another was being a little, I wish I knew more about HR and the employee side of it. And after Scott died, I did finally get my employee manual. We had policies and, normal things from NAID, but we didn't have our own employee manual, and I wrote one.
Wow.
And did that, and everybody had to sign it. And that's exactly when I switched over to the employee service, or the payroll service, not employee service.
Yep.
The payroll service.
Yep.
And for me, that was, I don't know, that just took a lot of stress off of my shoulders, that now I could always go back and say, you know what? This is not part of the agreement. And you signed it. So
good.
That was one. Let me see here. Oh, and another one that I learned, and it's something else Scott and I should have done before, was to keep better track of our truck maintenance that was going on. I knew about all kinds of things, and I've learned by the seat of my pants everything about trucks. I'm a city girl, and I've never driven a truck in my life. I never owned a truck in my life until this. And so I learned along the way, but DOT has a lot of regulations. And when I went to sell those last 2 trucks, gratefully, I did know a lot about it. And I had my top driver again with me at all times when I'd have somebody looking at one of my used trucks. And it would have helped if I had better records of what we had done to each truck, because I don't remember the exact mileage on the highest truck, but it was over 250,000 miles on our trucks, and they're still running. All of them are still running, all 7 of them.
Yeah. So you talked about contracts, HR process, truck maintenance. Was there any succession related things in terms of you having to figure stuff out after the fact that in retrospect you wish you could have done earlier, that was more how to operate the business, how to run the business? Was there anything there that would have, in retrospect, there's no blame we're taking, it's just the lesson. Was there any lesson from that period that you wish you could gone back and say, let's do this now? And again, this is for the benefit of another person or couple running a business. Was there anything there that...
I wish we had been able to have a little better handle on employees, especially, and being in monthly meetings or weekly meetings. We didn't even have weekly meetings. We didn't have monthly meetings. And I think we should have done that. We should have done that. And I had been managing, before we moved over here and started our business here, I had been managing 18 employees, and I knew this.
Interesting.
Yeah. And, I think keeping your employees in their circle and giving them feedback and letting them give you feedback. Now, as one of my bosses used to say, this is not a democracy. Your business is your business, and it's not a democracy. So, but I really think we kind of left, that was pretty weak. We were weak in that, doing employee reviews, and we really should have done more of that.
Yeah. So I guess as we come to the completion of this conversation, is there any, looking back over the years and over the course of the part of the chapter in your life known as Colorado Document Security, is there any insights, any revelations, any big things that come to mind that are sort of that cap it off for you, or that say something about this period of time for you, whether it be through the whole process or the last few years or what?
I don't know exactly, but I know that I've always been amazed at how much of a family Nate is.
Yeah.
So many friends. I will always recognize one of those damn trucks. I think as long as I live. But I really would encourage people to be involved in iSigma, I guess it is now, and do something where you're giving back to your community. Because we did do that a lot, and be a part of the community and supported all kinds of things. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It's about all I can say.
No, it's beautiful. It really is. And I think it's a testament to, and for me, it's a testament to the belief that you and Scott brought into this business, that Scott for many years exemplified, and you did behind the scenes, but you also traveled to events. You were also part of a massive amount of activity while Scott served on the board. All of that stuff that happened over the years, you were part of it. And Scott, I believe, and you, the two of you had a commitment to not just receiving, but to giving, and a perpetual amount of giving that happened.
Yes. The mentorship, he did a lot of mentoring for a lot of people. And the sharing with each other, I think, is so important. There are some industries, that they won't talk to each other because they don't want the competition. And if, as long as we can learn from each other, that's where this business is going to keep growing. Yeah. And we keep educating our customers and our prospective customers on how important security is and how you're handling your documents. And of course, all the, hard drives. Hey, I found a hard drive, by the way, that Scott hid. As I was just unloading a cabinet, I went, what is this?
Well, that hard drive will need to get shredded officially.
I need that shredded, and now I not sure how I'm going to do that. But anyway, I will get it done.
Well, you have a community of people who know how to do that.
Yeah.
Yes. So, final question: now that the shredding business is no longer part of your life, now that it's passed to its new owners, what's next in Jill Fasken's life? Where is Jill going next?
Oh boy. Well, I'm still learning how to be this sort of retired, although I don't know that I'll ever feel retired, but my initial plan now is after 2.5 years since Scott died, and I'm finally going to move to Austin, Texas, and live near my grandkids.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I'll get involved in the community there in other ways. I'll probably teach sewing again, and although I can also see myself doing some books, doing somebody's books once a week or something.
Find a little shredding company that needs some.
I know there is one there. Yeah, a good friend of ours has one nearby, and I'll be talking to him.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Jill, like I said at the beginning, you are my hero, and I had the luxury and privilege of having somewhat of an insider view of the whole, after Scott's passing, you're assuming control of the business and watching, you really handle that through all of the complexity, the emotional complexity, but also the movement into the COVID experience and all of the stuff that came with it, to getting your truck, to all of those things that happened. And I believe you're a superhero, and I am so honored and privileged to have watched this journey unfold. And part of why I wanted to have you on the show today was to honor both Scott's legacy in this industry, but also yours, because behind every Scott is a Jill. And Jill, you are someone that made really great things happen. And thank you for being on the show with me today.
Thank you. Can I say one more thing that should have been said before? And that was because Scott ran a lot of those and set up a lot of, like, our GPS system, our phone system, our computers and everything, all those, get your login information and get your name on it. Because there were a couple of companies that wouldn't talk to me because I wasn't one of their contacts. And I had to fight. To get some of those things taken care of when I was shutting things down.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Great final point to wrap this whole thing is you're a hero, and don't forget, people, if you're listening today,
passwords.
Get your passwords in order.
Yes. Get your passwords in order.
Jill, you are the best. Thank you again for joining us today.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks again for listening to the Shred Coach podcast with Tom Adams. Make sure to tune in every week for a brand new $10,000 strategy or idea from trusted shredding and business professionals.